Thank you. I'm not going to have any slides. I've had enough death by PowerPoint over the last few days. But I will want to talk to you a little bit about DHS and the Homeland Security Enterprise, recognizing the last few times that I've talked to this community, we've gotten a lot of questions around what DHS is, who we are, what we do. I think some of that is we benefit from the visibility of our operating components, and they're more well known in terms of FEMA and TSA and others. But generally, I wanted to give you a full run through of the Homeland Security Enterprise, where geospatial fits, and some of the opportunities and challenges we're facing, and some of the objectives and priorities that we're pursuing as a department. So DHS, we all know why it originated, 9/11, but in its stand-up, we had 26 legacy agency/elements stretched across multiple departments within the federal enterprise that were pulled together into the Department of Homeland Security. That mission set includes not just the more common known emergency response, disaster recovery. It includes things like transportation security, which is actually a multimodal transportation security agency. It's not just air traffic control. We have Customs Border Protection. We have Customs Enforcement, Citizen and Immigration Services. We have U.S. Coast Guard for maritime security. We have smaller elements like the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office. And we have elements within Secret Service. We have the Federal Protective Service. So you can see that DHS spans much more than responding to the disaster. It spans a lot of law enforcement and intel operations, and that diversity of mission compelled Congress in 2004 under the Intel Reform Terrorism Protection Act to put a statute in there, Section 8201, that recognized that they believed in their infinite wisdom that geospatial information technology was a critical capability to improve and ensure life-saving, protection of property, and the execution of Homeland Security missions. Part of that Reform Act in 2004 also includes some language around information sharing and the Information Sharing Environment Office within DHS, as well as Congress clarified that DHS should not just look inwardly, but we should look outwardly, recognizing that Homeland Security was a national issue, and it required collaboration and partnerships across all sectors of the nation. That included not just the state and locals, tribal, territorial. It includes partnerships and collaborations with the private sector, with the citizens and the public, as well as our other federal partners, and affiliations and interactions with international players. That means that from a perspective of our enterprise, we're not an agency of just 200,000+ employees. Now we're an agency that has interactions with over 1.2 million elements within the nation. How do we calculate that or tabulate that? We have 60,000 organizations that we interact with. We got the 50 states, we've got their counties and city affiliates, we've got their sub-organizations, meaning their first responder, E911, Homeland Security offices, we got their police and fire and EMT affiliates. When you tabulate out that workforce and those interactions, it represents a little over 1 million, 1.2 million people. That's a pretty large constituency and a mission set that spans from an intel component all the way over to a citizen-facing services component of issuing visas and supporting visas, supporting citizenship services, as well as supporting disaster recovery and relief. So, how did Congress determine that geospatial and what the role of the Geospatial Management Office should be? Congress determined that Geospatial Management Office should look at building partnerships across that constituency, recognizing that DHS isn't going to build a national data set on its own. We should leverage the international as well as the national community Federal Geographic Data Committee, as well as National Technical Means from the NSG. So GMO actually sits on both bodies. A little bit bipolar some days, but we sit and represent DHS interest in terms of intelligence community assets and resources. And then we sit on the XCOM and the steering committee of the FGDC, recognizing the civil sector resources and capabilities that can support the enterprise. I would bet that every one of you has a smartphone. I would bet that every one of you has a credit card. Those assets are enabled by geospatial capability. And that's one of the things that Congress was concerned with when they identified that we need to ensure the infrastructure protection and critical infrastructure of the nation. GPS enables, through position navigation and timing services, both of those elements. DHS is involved in that. And I'm point that out to recognize that our use of geospatial and our interest in geospatial is not just traditional maps. It's not just the traditional collection of foundational data. It's really moved to what assets are enabling our situational awareness, enabling our production of geospatial information. What tools and technologies do we need to exploit that information, that data, and make it into actionable information? And then how do we communicate that out safely and responsibly to that national community, recognizing what the mayor pointed out is not everybody has the same clearances. Not everybody has the same protocols as the federal government. So we have a very complex and diverse ecosystem that we have to interact with. Some of that we've accomplished through partnerships. We have a partnership with the PMISE, and they'll talk a little bit about the geospatial interoperability reference architecture and the importance of interoperability in achieving not only the Homeland Security mission, but other critical missions of the federal and the national enterprise. And then we have partnerships with our civilian counterparts in the FGDC around the use and availability of other foundational data sets. We have initiative around driving interoperability, not just from an architectural standpoint, but also from an exchange standpoint, recognizing that the vast majority of geospatial information that offers value to DHS is not traditional imagery. Imagery is important. Imagery provides a valuable and critical data point for us understanding situational awareness. But it's all the transactional data that's occurring in our ecosystem that is driving our understanding of scenarios, our understanding of actions, of players, and how those relate to the security of the nation. For example, we have the Office of Health Affairs. Within the Office of Health Affairs is the National Biosurveillance Integration Center. They coordinate with the WHO, World Health Organization. They coordinate with HHS and CDC for domestic. They coordinate with APHIS within Department of Agriculture. That's the Animal and Food Inspection Service. All those elements, they try to derive an indication of the health security of the nation. Those could be emerging threats from outside the nation to activities that are happening within the nation. That's not traditional geospatial information. That's not information you would obtain by looking at an imagery. Imagery may help you to qualify that information and clarify the locational elements of that information. But that's all coming from unstructured, social, and transactional data. It's a new monochrome for the department. And it's a new opportunity as well as it's a challenge. We have the DNDO, Domestic Nuclear Detection Office. They have a mission that involves collecting information from sensors. Their sensors are not traditional imagery sensors. Their sensors are sensors deployed around domestic nuclear facilities and human sensors around non-traditional radioactive producers or managers within the national community. What is that, right? What do you mean by that? Well, we have radiological resources that are applied to the health industry. So hospitals actually use a lot of radioactive technology, and they produce some radioactive waste. It's not just coming from the nuclear plants. We do not want that waste or that material to get into the wrong hands. We also don't want to apply FPS and other law enforcement resources to responding to false reports. So they work with the local communities in their Securing the Cities initiative to understand, is the hospital getting ready to transfer that radioactive material? And notifying law enforcement that they're getting ready to do that. Notifying law enforcement that they're getting ready to discard something. So that if the sensor goes off or something goes off, we don't have the police reporting just to check on the dumpster, right? We want to apply those resources more effectively to immediate needs. So they're using sensor information not just from the traditional physical sensor deployed, but also using human sensors to communicate actions and activities that are occurring, and then pairing that with other information within the Homeland Security enterprise. So those are examples of where we're using geospatial information and technology from a non-traditional perspective to derive actionable information. Now, our bigger challenge is, how do we safeguard that information, and how do we share it to that diverse community? And how do we do that in a way that the data is still usable and actionable? So we have a lot of challenges within the department right now, not just in terms of mining and leveraging open source data, but how do we start to anonymize our information in a way that we can share it to those outside partners and communicate actionable information to some of our stakeholders. It could be the public, in terms of we're wanting to communicate them to take certain actions, or it could be local law enforcement or public safety that we're wanting to enable their activities. How do we do that in a way that we don't filter the data so much that we dilute it into something that's no longer meaningful? Those are areas of challenge. Other areas of challenge for us in Homeland Security is we're becoming very data rich, but information poor. Our problem is not big data from the standpoint of we need a cloud infrastructure to host that data. Our problem from big data is, how do we filter out the most pertinent information from that swarm of data that's flowing into the Homeland Security enterprise? Whether that's feature extraction based on traditional geospatial intelligence sources or geospatial data sources, or whether it's analytic processing of that non-traditional data to identify patterns, movements, means, and tactics, and then communicate that out to the stakeholders that will be supporting us. Another area of opportunity and concern with the Department of Homeland Security is cyber. Everything happens in space and time. Whether it's in the perceived virtual environment, or it's within what we consider our real world environment. It still happens in space and time. So being able to understand where cybersecurity risk and activities are occurring and what the cascading effects could be in terms of the physical infrastructure and the systems that rely on that infrastructure is a key area of concern for the Department of Homeland Security and our private sector partners, recognizing that the vast majority of that infrastructure is not owned and operated by the federal government. It's owned and operated by the private sector. And they're our collaborator. They are a true partner with us in ensuring the resiliency and protecting those assets and the economic as well as the security of the nation. These are areas that we are highly attuned towards. These are areas that we're focusing on. These are areas that we're looking to the commercial sector to offer us solutions, propose ideas to us. We're trying to understand what it is that you don't know about DHS. How can we better communicate our mission? How can we better articulate our use of geospatial information technology so that you can be a valued contributor to our enterprise. And we want to articulate where we're leveraging our partner base within our government sector so that you can understand the complexity of our ecosystem and the challenges that we face as a Homeland Security enterprise. What is the role of the GMO in all this? Well, if you go look up IRPTA and you look up Section 8201, that's where it defines the roles and responsibilities of the Geospatial Management Office. It's really 5 core areas that we're responsible for. Policy and partnerships. Congress says we want you to drive policy and strategy for geospatial within the Homeland Security enterprise. And they say not just look at DHS, but look at how you will partner and collaborate with those other stakeholders. They mandate responsibilities on driving the information and geospatial data strategy for the department and how we gain access to information not just from our federal partners, but also gain access from our private partners and our state and locals and tribal and territorials and international partners. They mandate to the GMO responsibilities for driving a shared technology strategy to support those operating elements of the department, and making sure that we're not duplicating technology investment, that we're leveraging each other's capabilities and competencies. They confer responsibilities for training and tradecraft, and that can be executed through grant guidance, recognizing that we rely on our state and local partners, and we need to help enable those state and local partners. And then they confer responsibilities on the Geospatial Management Office in supporting the components and fielding these capabilities, leveraging the assets that are available. We have a mission support function. I like to say that the GMO has matured from just being geospatial management to our geospatial management and operations. Because of the last few years, we've really honed in on that 5th goal that an objective that Congress mandated on us. How can we put the power of geospatial information into the hands of our operators and analysts in a usable form that can transform the way they do business? Not just go out and buy data, not just go out and negotiate information sharing agreements, not just go out and acquire and negotiate licensing of technology, software, and tools, but really starting to put those into the hands of our operating elements so that they can be more effective in their mission, and understanding what those challenges and opportunities are so we can communicate with the commercial sector and our partners to fulfill those needs. So I'll leave it as that because I need to hold a few minutes for an award that we're going to present.
Well, if you don't mind, we have a few questions first.
Absolutely.
Okay, within DHS, who has responsibility for geospatially enabling the mission operational data of the 26 elements into the DHS Common Operational Picture?
So the easy answer is to say the CIO. It is really up to the CIO to enable their information systems. The GMO's role and the GIO's role is to support the components in enabling their business systems and the information that they capture and collect so that it can be geospatially informed.
Okay, if we could have one more question here. What does the future of the DHS Geospatial Management Office look like?
So I would say, sitting in mind, that there's opportunity and there's a lot of growth potential. We've really moved, like I said, from focusing mostly on acquiring information to negotiating those licensing agreements to really trying to enable that mission support function. So the future of the GMO is we're really growing from just being stewards of information technology to being consultants with the operating elements on deploying these capabilities. That being said, we've added remote sensing competencies to the GMO. We've added data management competencies to the GMO. We still maintain our PNT competencies. position navigation and timing competencies. We actually have a staff resource with the National Coordination Office for PNT. And then we maintain our management functions, but we really started to build out those operational support elements. And the GMO has started to shepherd enterprise capabilities for the Department of Homeland Security operating elements, i.e. we steward the geospatial information infrastructure, which is a cloud environment within our federal data center that allows our components to access both common foundational data as well as common operating data. It also is where we host a series of common operating picture capabilities. We have our DHS COP for the National Operations Center hosted on that platform. We have a cyber communications COP, initial operating capability for NCIC. We have a capability for NBIC in National Biosurveillance Integration Center. So the future is we're really starting to move from just doing management functions to really starting to get into supporting day-to-day operations. And I would say that's a bright future because we still have so much work to do in terms of improving the analytic capacity of the department and the use of those capabilities.